The Benjamin Dixon Show is only possible with listener support. Go to www.thebenjamindixonshow.com to register for our blog and join the Progressive Army.
I am excited to have Congressman-Elect Jamaal Bowman, who is going to Washington, D.C. to represent New York's 16th District. Congressman-Elect Bowman, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me, man. It's a real pleasure to be here with you.
The pleasure is mine. First and foremost, congratulations on the historic victory. We were watching it throughout the pandemic. You managed to get out there in the streets and run a successful campaign. So first and foremost, congratulations. How is orientation going and all that coming along?
So thank you again for having me. Orientation is a lot of information, a lot to take in, a lot to soak in. So I'm just kind of taking it day by day. Great to meet my new colleagues, especially the ones on the Democratic side and the ones who are a bit more progressive. But meeting all the colleagues has been great. It's been interesting because we have two QAnon supporters and followers who are now in Congress. That's pretty interesting when you hear, when we have a doctor who's explaining to us the protocols around COVID, and you have individuals stand up and say, well, wait a minute, my state is an open state. We don't have to wear a mask. I feel like it's oppressing my freedom, you telling me to wear a mask. So that's pretty interesting. Also interesting that a couple of the questions who came from my colleagues on the other side of the aisle were around, can I bring my firearm to the Capitol? I want to arm and I want to keep it in my office. I don't go anywhere without my gun. So all of that has been very interesting. But on the logistical side, on my end, I got an apartment, which is great because I'm going to have to stay here. Obviously, I want to be as comfortable as possible when I'm not at home in Yonkers. We pick offices tomorrow. Committee assignments are coming out. So things are going well overall.
Awesome. Awesome. You were on CNN last week, and this is one of the reasons, I've been wanting to get you on the show for some time, but you were on CNN last week, and the signal was lost. We're going to leave it at that point. We're going to say the signal was lost, but it was lost at a most inconvenient moment. I'm going to play the clip for the audience for them to see the exchange and what you were talking about in context, and then we'll discuss it.
Very unfortunate, Bernie Sanders had to say. So based on Biden's elections so far, do you see anyone that's progressive enough for you?
Well, first, let me say off the top, thank you so much for having me. When I hear names like Rahm Emanuel being floated as part of Biden's cabinet, considering the fact that he covered up the murder of Laquan McDonald in Chicago, considering the fact that he closed over 50 elementary schools and 30 mental health institutions, it's incredibly alarming. And
So we lost the Congressman-elect there. Sorry about that. We'll try to bring him back.
So Congressman-elect, we're not going to talk about necessarily your signal being lost. I'll speculate about that when you're not on air. But very specifically to what you were saying, I think what you were saying was critical, which is one of the reasons I wanted to have you in this interview, is because you're pointing out some real life issues with a politician who, if he is appointed to the Biden administration, would be extremely problematic for a lot of people, especially Black people. I would love for you to finish those thoughts because you weren't able to finish them that day.
Yeah, it just undermines President-elect Biden's whole effort to build back better in a real way. It undermines, he says he wants to focus on racial equity and racial justice. But someone like Rahm Emanuel, who's a career political operative, who leveraged, who comes from the Obama White House and leveraged that position into being mayor of Chicago. And then as mayor of Chicago, you hide or suppress evidence of a murder of Laquan McDonald.
Right.
You blatantly did that. It was a blatant suppression. You didn't want that information to come out. I'm an educator, so any mayor who closes 30 elementary schools, which is the most tender and important time of a child's learning, you close elementary schools throughout the city. You close mental health institutions throughout the city, and you've never shown any real backbone or urgency around dealing with issues of racial justice and racial equity. So I was commenting on Rahm Emanuel.
Yeah.
I was also I was going to comment on Bruce Reed, because Bruce Reed's name has been floated out there as well. Again, someone who's an austerity budget individual, someone
Right.
who's a deficit hawk, and someone who has supported cuts to Social Security throughout his career. And he's the exact person. Both of them are the exact people we do not need in the Biden administration in this moment.
I feel like we're talking to two different groups of people inside of the Democratic Party. One group who is extremely excited about the fact that we just got rid of Donald Trump. We still have to wait to January 20th. But we've effectively gotten rid of Donald Trump, and a lot of them are like, give Joe Biden some space, let him make his picks. Why are you being critical at this moment? The other group that you're speaking to are the rest of us. Those of us who understand that who Joe Biden picks matters in a very specific, tangible, material fashion. Could you just express to those people in the audience who may not understand why you are leveling critique at a potential pick from Joe Biden, namely Rahm Emanuel, why it's important for us to do that right here, right now, and not wait until the appointment is made?
Well, first of all, it's important for all of us to raise our voices, not just me as a member of Congress, but the general public, right? This is a country for the people, of the people, by the people, right? So everyone should raise their voices in support of or in critique of any Biden appointment. For too long, we haven't raised our voices loud enough, and that's how we got someone like Donald Trump into the White House in the first place. So just to be clear, John Kerry as climate czar, Janet Yellen as Secretary of the Treasury, Alejandro Mayorkas as the new head of the Department of Homeland Security. These are picks that I support, and these are picks that I like, and many within my circle support and appreciate. And we understand that Biden is a moderate, he's a centrist, he's going to pick people sort of on both sides. But someone like Rahm Emanuel and Bruce Reed, that's the extreme in my opinion. And it's unacceptable for Joe Biden to pick people like that, particularly in this moment as we deal with a racial reckoning, as we deal with a global pandemic, as we deal with an economic crisis that we haven't seen since the Great Depression. Building back better is building an economy that works for everyone going forward, where everyone gets an opportunity to thrive. And it's our job to raise our voices in support of, but in critique of, any of the picks that go into the Biden administration.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for saying it exactly like that, because we are dealing with issues that we have to address, right? Issues that have to be tackled head on because they're existential crises. Climate change, for example. I want to shift and ask you your thoughts on the changing dynamics of leadership in the Democratic Party in general. I think it is representative of, or represented by the fact that you are speaking out very clearly against someone from the Clinton administration that you, along with a lot of other people, right? You're not by yourself in this by long. You have probably more people backing you up than you realize, but you're making it clear and you're drawing the line in the sand here. And I'm just really curious, what do you think that says about the changing dynamics in the Democratic Party in general, the changing demographics, and the future of the Democratic Party?
It's incredibly exciting, quite honestly. 2 years ago, we had the squad get into Congress, and we have these 4 amazing women of color pushing back against white supremacy, particularly white male supremacy in the eyes of Donald Trump, and pushing back against that system from the inside and literally dismantling it and creating a pathway for someone like me to even think about running for Congress. Now, fast forward 2 years later, you have myself, you have Mondaire Jones, you have Cori Bush, you have Marie Newman, and you have others who are now entering Congress. And you have conversations like a Green New Deal and Medicare for all and housing as a human right. These conversations are now ubiquitous in political circles and within the psyche and the consciousness of the American people. Like every debate or town hall that I had during my campaign, we spoke about the Green New Deal and Medicare for all, right? That wouldn't have happened if we didn't have this shift. 2016 Bernie Sanders run, 2018 the 2018 squad getting in, and now us. And what you see is you see the changing of the guard almost, because many in senior leadership are very senior,
Right.
and they will not be there forever. Even though some have been there, it seems like ever. But in the next 5 to 10 years, we have an opportunity to truly rebuild our nation. I call it the rebirth of America. In alignment with the ideals that are written on our Constitution, but in a way that works for everyone, regardless of race or class or background. So I'm incredibly excited by what's happening and what's going to happen within the next 5 to 10 years. I mean, look, President Biden is not Bernie Sanders, right? He's not Bernie Sanders, but he had the most progressive Democratic agenda in history because of the Sanders-Biden coalition, right? And the focus on climate change and the focus on racial equity. So it's an exciting time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Speaking of the squad, you mentioned Cori Bush and you mentioned the squad in general. I want to pull up on the screen a tweet, 2 tweets, one from Ayanna Pressley, the other one's from Cori Bush, and they're both addressing former President Barack Obama. According to thehill.com yesterday, President Obama stated that, quote, "You lose people with snappy slogans like defund the police." Ayanna Pressley weighed into the conversation, and this is what she said, quote, "The murders of generations of unarmed black folks by police have been horrific. Lives are at stake daily. So I'm out of patience when it comes, I'm out of patience with critiques of the language of activists. Whatever a grieving family says is their truth, and I will never stop fighting for their justice and healing." That was one of the squad members, Ayanna Pressley from Massachusetts. And then you have Cori Bush, who we've had on the show before. Amazing victory that she had. And this is what she said as she makes her way to Congress. She said, "With all due respect, Mr. President," speaking to Barack Obama, "let's talk about losing people. We lost Michael Brown Jr. We lost Breonna Taylor. We are losing our loved ones to police violence. It's not a slogan. Defund the police is not a slogan. It's a mandate for keeping our people alive. Defund the police." What are your thoughts in general about 3 things? We have 3 things going here. We have Barack Obama wading into the conversation. All due respect to the president. He went through a lot of challenges as president of the United States with racism, with white supremacy, with the Republican Party. But what are your thoughts about him wading into this conversation about defund the police on the side that he came in on? Then number 2, defund the police in general. But then number 3, the fact that Cori Bush and Ayanna Pressley from the squad, I mean, they're coming through and they're not making any apologies.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking and it's infuriating to see that language and that tweet that quotes President Obama, because it's like, we've lost Tamir Rice. We've lost Trayvon Martin. We've lost Tatiana Jefferson. We've lost Philando Castile. We've lost Ramarley Graham, on and on and on, right? And, we've allowed defund the police to be co-opted by the right as a talking point. And now we have to continue to respond to the talking point without dealing with the issue of and the legacy of institutional racism and systemic racism in a very real way. If you're black in America, you're more likely to be killed by police. If you're black in America, you're more likely to go to jail for long periods of time. If you're black and or poor in America, you're more likely to be in prison and not be able to bail yourself out. If you're black in America, you're more likely to die of heart disease or cancer. You're more likely to die of COVID. You're more likely to deal with food insecurity and housing insecurity. You're more likely to go to underfunded schools. I mean, are we going to deal with systemic racism, or are we going to continue to talk about defund the police? And on the defund the police point, again, what we're saying is a reallocation of resources for true public health and true public safety. 95% of what police do is not dealing with violent crimes. 5% of what they do deal with rape, murder, aggravated assault, not dealing with mental health, not dealing with administrative costs, right? So, we're not having the right conversations, and we're not talking about real reform. And I hate the word reform, because when we talk about reform, we talk about better training for police.
Right.
Well, we've tried that. We've tried that all over the country. There's a culture in America's DNA that devalues Black life. And that culture is expressed by law enforcement in the murder of Black people, but it's also expressed by vigilantes in the murder of Ahmaud Arbery,
Yes.
or Trayvon Martin. I mean, these are people who think that because they are white and they represent law enforcement, they could kill Black bodies and get away with it. We're not talking transparency. We're not talking accountability. And, my sister Corey, my sister Ayanna, I'm right there with them, right? In calling that out. That's nonsense. We would love to have former President Obama articulate a vision and a strategy in dealing with the infrastructure and the underbelly of institutional racism in this country. He hasn't done that. Although he has said, Trayvon Martin could have been his son. So where's that, Barack Obama? As we have these conversations now.
Where is that, Barack Obama? Absolutely. A couple things while I have you for the last few minutes that I just have to have you on the show to talk about. You mentioned on your Twitter timeline in reaction, and I'm just pulling this out of my memory, but I recall you tweeting about everyone's concern around defund the police, and you kind of tongue in cheek, but very, very poignantly asked a question: what are you going to do when we start talking about reparations, right? So if you have all these people who are getting nervous about defunding the police, we can fully expect that they're going to fight back against reparations. Tell me what you were thinking about that tweet, and also, more importantly, what are you thinking about reparations?
Well, we put forth a reconstruction agenda, which takes a critical look at American history, and a critical look at why the legacy of slavery and discrimination and oppression continues to persist throughout all of America's institutions. So for us, it's about, let's tell the real story of American history. Let's talk about the headright system that gave English colonists land in order to provide food for their family and housing, et cetera, et cetera. Let's talk about the Homestead Act, which gave millions of lands to white people, right. and the freed slaves were not given 40 acres and a mule. Let's talk about the legacy of Jim Crow. Let's talk about the GI Bill. Let's talk about redlining. Let's talk about continued discrimination in housing and what's happening with in the criminal justice system. So when we talk about reparations, we talk about healing the historical harms. We talk about a process of truth and reconciliation, similar to Rwanda, similar to Germany, similar to South Africa. And in order for us to become a true nation and democracy that works for everyone, we have to deal with the historical harm that continues to persist. So for me, education and labor is at the top of my agenda, and economic inequality and reparations are at the top of my agenda in support of HR 40, but in getting really clear in terms of what we mean. Identify the descendants of slaves, provide access to housing and higher education in the way that we've never done before for Black people, and land, and provide cash payments as well to restore the harms and provide restitution for what happened throughout our history. So we're serious about that conversation of reparations for sure.
Absolutely. Last but not least, the clip on CNN that you were, the signal was lost. That's what we'll say. Have you had a chance to go back to finish that conversation with CNN or any other media organization?
No, I have not been back on CNN, and I have not been back on mainstream media at all. And that's the thing. Let me just say this. I've done hundreds of Zoom interviews on both mainstream media and podcasts and all over the place for the last several months. That has never happened before. Not once. Not once has that happened before. So that was pretty interesting.
Yeah, yeah.
On a platform like CNN.
And Congressman-Elect Bowman, I am going to do a whole lot of speculation, but because I know how this game works, I'm not going to leave you here to be involved in that speculation. But I do want to ask you this much. As a black man to another black man, one, let me say this comment. It is amazing to see what you're doing. It's amazing to see you in this space, and it's amazing because you're speaking with a boldness and a clarity of your values, of your integrity, for progressive change, not just for the namesake of progressivism, but for actual liberation to help people's lives. Do you think America is ready for an actual progressive black man to be as high up as Congress, or we'll see Senate one day? What do you think America, their disposition towards black progressive men really is?
Well, it's an interesting question. I can start by looking at my district, right? So we tripled voter turnout in our election. We tripled turnout amongst young people and people of color, and we won by 16 points, and we were up by 25 points on election night against a 31-year incumbent who was the chair of the Foreign Affairs Committee that everyone described as unbeatable and very powerful. 2 years prior to that, Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez did the same thing to Joe Crowley. So America is the people, right? So as long as we continue to plug into the people, engage the people, listen to, learn from, and love the people, and truly love them in a way that fights for policy that improves their lives, that's what's most important. And I think the majority of the American people are ready for transformative change. Even those who identify as Republican and working class, they're ready for transformative change, which is why they supported Donald Trump, because they thought that he was that change for them. But so people are ready for change, and I think as long as we stay plugged into the people and not accountable to the corporate elite and the wealthy elite, America will continue to move in the direction it needs to go.
Congressman-Elect Jamaal Bowman, New York 16th District, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.
Pleasure's mine. So I just want to say a couple of things while without Congressman-Elect Jamaal Bowman on the call, on the interview, because I don't want him to be held accountable for what I say. That's how this game works. But I want to say this. Damn well CNN cut that man's video off. They cut it off on purpose because he was speaking truth to power. And I'm going to be honest with you. They are trying, in my best estimation, the fact that an incoming congressman, black man from New York, cut off by a mainstream media outlet like CNN, has not been invited back to correct their wrong, right? Has not been invited back to any other major media outlet. Tells you everything that you need to know with regard to him being cut off in the first place. It's because he was speaking too much truth for CNN. And that specific truth is one that is an uncomfortable, inconvenient truth for centrists. People like Rahm Emanuel have never been good for the black community. And I don't care which president he served for. He does not need to serve for another president ever again.